Hello, everyone. Welcome to our TeaCup Entrepreneurs Expert Series. For January, we needed to delay it a little bit because of the weather. My kids were all home virtual, and therefore they needed all of our devices and all of the spaces. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility with that. But today, the expert is myself, Steph Pellish, your hostess here at Teacup, and we're going to talk about brave entrepreneurship and what that means. And so, BRAVE is an acronym, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. But really, for me, it was something that I created a few years ago because I was working with moms and I myself was overwhelmed and trying to figure out a framework to really describe like what were the things that were moving me forward or were giving me direction or helping me discern what was important or what I needed to work on. And I know for a few of you, you came to the annual planning event. And at that event, we really talked about like, where do we want to go this year? Who do we want to become this year? And how do we get to that person? And so that gave us the direction. And so this is kind of a deepening of how do we get there? How do we make sure that we're still in line, that we're still moving forward, but we're really deepening what it is that we say we want to do, or who we want to become. And so we're going to start with our B. I'm going to change my view because I always forget that it records as I view it. But so our B is for boundaries. And this is a strong one, a big one for women in particular. I know it was a big one for me because if you would have asked me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if I had boundaries, I would have said absolutely. And I did. I had good boundaries in some places and not great boundaries in other places. And part of this was I had really good boundaries with people who were outside of my circle, but inside of my circle, the closer they got, the less boundaries I had. So even with my husband, I really struggled to know like if he said something, I just went with what he said because I was like, oh, what he says is logical versus what I feel is emotional. And so logic must weigh more. Or with my parents, when they said something or they felt something, I was like, oh, well, I should because it's my parents. With the kids, it was so hard to. I always used to joke that it was easy for me to say no. I was the no mom. Like, I want a snack. No, it's not time for that. Like, it was easy for me to do the things that I knew it wasn't time for or wasn't in that moment, right? But inside, it was killing me that I was seeing all these other moms be like, sure, it doesn't matter. And I was like, wait, you just let your kid eat 10 snacks? Like, what? And so I started to really learn about what is a healthy boundary? What is a boundary? And a boundary is something that we create for ourselves or that we have for ourselves that is like a foundation. I don't want to say guideline because that doesn't feel strong enough, but it's like our own rules of what is right for us, what is appropriate in the time, and who can and cannot do things. And so when I think about being a mom, when I think about being an entrepreneur, and I'm going to use the mom example for a minute, but with my kids, it is my job to create a boundary. It is my job to tell them that they cannot be on screens past a certain time, or they only get one snack after school before dinner. And so those are the boundaries that I've created. And if we think about those boundaries as a box, this is the box that you need to stay inside of. It is my job to create and hold that box. it is my kid's job to push against that box to make sure that I am really stable in my boundaries. So when I think about it in business, if I think about clients, okay, these are my boundaries. I have contracts, I have rules, I have guidelines that guide how I run my business. And when a client comes to me and says, I want to cancel my membership, my boundary is it's a year-long membership. Of course, there are always extenuating circumstances, and I can decide to change that. But in integrity, I'm holding my boundary because it also teaches someone else to hold their boundary. It also teaches them what it feels like to come up against a boundary. And it's not my job to manage your trigger. It's not my job to manage you inside of that boundary. It's my job to create a boundary. And so that visual of learning that it was my job to create the boundary, my job to create that box, and it was their job to push against and to test and to stay inside. And if they go outside, because we're all humans, we're all able to make our own decisions. So my kids can decide to go outside of that boundary. I can have a client decide to go outside of that boundary. It's now my job to create a consequence. I will no longer work with that client. My child is now no longer able to have snacks for a week after school. They need to wait for dinner. Um, and so then you have to figure out like what are the appropriate consequences or what are the appropriate things. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit more in a little bit. But it's really knowing and feeling really strong and secure in what is right for you. What are those boundaries for you? And the acronym is BRAVE. And so we're kind of starting with the B because that's where we are. But there's no necessarily order for these. So brave or boundaries doesn't necessarily come before alignment because the alignment piece is really underlying so much of it. And so we're going to spend a little more time on the alignment piece too. But it's really knowing that when you create a boundary, it's healthy to create a boundary. It's healthy to, ask people to respect your work, your values, who you are. And that does not mean that if somebody is disrespectful or rude, that we just like push them away and say, oh, never working with you again. Like we need to be regulated in our boundary holding and in our consequence or our decision making. But that boundary piece, it's safe to have boundaries. It's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to have really strong boundaries. Boundaries are really loving. And so I'm going to go back to kids because I feel like it's a little bit easier to explain with kids, but you can use the word clients in here as well. But with kids, they feel more respected and more loved when they have boundaries. Without boundaries, it's actually a feeling of nobody cares what I do, so I'm just going to do whatever. And so when there are no boundaries, it's just a free for all and nobody cares, so I'll just do whatever. And now I've learned that I can just do whatever, take advantage. I now, the child now starts to internalize the same kind of narrative. Whereas if our boundaries are too strong, then there's going to be a lot of pushback. There's going to be a lot of, okay, this feels really tight, and I'm going to stay in here and I'm going to stay inside of this box. But for how long? It's like a pressure cooker if those boundaries are too tight. And that's where you have the kids or the clients who it's going great, it's going great, it's going great. And all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, hold on. This has been a boundary the whole time and I didn't know it because I never bumped up against it. Or they're constantly bumping up against it. And so Now they start to um, people please or just be more tentative. They don't really learn that confidence. They don't learn how to test their own boundaries and be inside of their own limits because the limits around them are so tight. And so figuring out what your boundaries are, figuring that out and holding them is really the safest place for your clients to interact with you, for your family to interact with you, for your friends, for everyone to interact with you when you're really conscious of what your boundaries are. You guys know, as an OT, I love regulation. I love talking about regulation. This morning, my anxiety was up really high this morning, and I spent time really being present and regulating myself because I know if I'm not regulated and I'm going to show up to teach, I'm going to be trying to prove myself. I'm going to be trying to tell you too many things. I'm going to be really forgetful, or I'm going to jump all over the place because I'm too worried I'm going to forget something. And so that anxiety, that dysregulation creates more chaos. So this morning, in my dysregulation, with that anxiety feeling creeping up, I wanted to send emails that do not need to be sent today. I wanted to take on tasks that are not important today. I started looking around my house and thinking every room is overwhelming. Every room is a mess. I need to start cleaning out every room. And I had to catch myself, right? Because, okay, are there messes and are there things that need to be tackled? Yes. But have they been that way for a while? Like they didn't just pop up today. But because I was feeling dysregulated, all of those other things started to come into my awareness. And so taking a shower, finding a cold drink of water, making sure I ate well at lunch, making sure that I took time and I just laid on the floor. I did some grounding. Okay, I'm just going to lay here. I'm going to slow my breathing. I did some hands on my chest because what happens is if I don't do that and I kind of fake it till I make it and I just keep moving throughout my day and I show up here for this class and I'm like, okay, I know the things. Again, like I'm going to be forgetful. I'm going to start pulling things that maybe are relevant, but not as relevant. Or I'm going to start a sentence and then forget it. Whereas when I'm more regulated, my ADHD calms down, my anxiety calms down, my ability to focus calms down, my ability to come up with another story or relevant message also comes through more easily. And so I'm curious. Like I know I've talked about regulation in our meetings and in some of our workshops and things before. Like are there things that you are finding or have found that are regulating that you can do in a moment? Even if it takes like a couple minutes, but like you don't need to go out and book a massage to get regulated. You don't need to go on a vacation to get regulated. What are some of the things that you're doing in your day-to-day to either stay regulated or get regulated when you're feeling those things?
I'm bad at finding things to do to regulate myself, to be
Well,
honest. Um, I know all the stuff that you talk about. I've talked about things with my therapist. I've talked about, I know all of the things and just I'm really terrible about it. Um, if I am really conscious of it, I will take my dog for a walk.
mhm.
Taking a walk normally helps kind of help me come back to everything. Um, but I think a lot of times I do try to like work through all of that, which isn't good.
So I'm curious, are you noticing when those feelings are coming up, or are you avoiding and then kind of after the fact you're noticing that it happened?
Um, I think I notice that it's happening and I deny myself like the opportunity to like come back to um like center, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So this morning, like I mentioned, I was sitting working and going through emails and feeling this anxiety come up. And I caught myself and I kind of like dismissed it. I was like, it's fine, just keep going. Like, we need to get this done.
Exactly.
And then I caught myself again and I was like, okay, hold on. We're sending out emails that aren't regulated and aren't actually going to get what you need to get done because you're now trying to rush this, which is going to make it messier.
Hmm.
And it doesn't need to be solved today. And so it's something that I've learned to stop. And it, for whatever reason, I say for whatever reason, but our brains are so used to being in that state, especially with ADD, that stopping it feels more uncomfortable than letting it continue.
Mm.
And so for me, I'm like, well, this is familiar. Let me just keep going. Let me just ride this wave. Whereas stopping it and slowing down is actually the more uncomfortable thing because I don't want to stop and slow down. I want to solve all of my problems and get all of these things done because I think that's what's going to make me feel better. But in reality, I can't do all of the things that are in front of me, and I will never have my to-do list cleared.
Hmm.
And so if I stop and slow down and take some breaths and put both feet on the ground, hands on my chest, whatever it might be, my body really when I regulate, my body goes into a big yawn. And so if you were to watch me when I regulate, the first thing you can see it, like my body goes into yawning. And so one of my favorite things to do is orienting. So we're going to do some orienting right now. So I want everybody to feet flat on the floor. You can put your hands on your lap, or if you feel comfortable, you can put one on your chest and one on your stomach. But wherever you feel comfortable and kind of grounded. And what I want you to do is I want you to start on the left-hand side of the room, and I'll show you first, but we're going to start on the left-hand side of the room. I think I might be backwards, but and you can already see just because I put myself in that position, I just took a deep breath, really unconsciously. But what we're going to do is we're going to just look up and down, and we're going to slowly scan the room. And we're going to go from one side of the room to the other. And I just felt my shoulder strap. And if your eyes just kind of want to linger somewhere and your gaze gets caught somewhere, you can just kind of keep it there. But really looking to see what's happening in your environment. Really letting your senses take in what's around you so that we know there's no immediate danger. And while cognitively, consciously, we know that there's not a fire happening or an emergency that we need to deal with right now. All of those little things, like the fact that I have three piles on my counter, feel like it's an emergency. Feel like if I don't deal with it, my worth goes down, my productivity goes down. I'm not successful because I have a mess on my counter, right? And none of those are conscious, but those are all things that are programmed and have been programmed. And so when I'm in that anxiety state, when I'm not regulated and I look over and see those piles, it automatically pulls like that quiet little voice and makes it louder. Whereas when I'm regulated, that quiet little voice comes out and it's like, ah, you're not successful because you have piles on the counter. And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Thank you. But it's a lot easier to quiet that when we're regulated, when we're taking that moment to just take that breath and to really notice what your body's doing. So even before I got on this call, I just videoed myself regulating and I'll post it at some point. But even as I was doing it, I was paying attention to what my body was doing. And at one point, I was going to like take a deep breath and roll my shoulders back. And as I got to the top, I was like, oh, I need to stay here for a minute. And so I just let my body stay there instead of being like, no, we need to roll our shoulders and get them back so that I need to relax. Like that's the opposite of what I'm trying to do, right? Like forced relaxation never works. And so really listening to our bodies, listening to those small cues of, okay, when I take that deep breath, do I want to hold it? Do I want to move my shoulders back? Can I drop my tongue from the roof of my mouth? Can I drop my hips a little bit more? Can I get my feet flat on the ground? Okay. And so paying attention to what your body is doing while you're regulating will give you some of those cues and learn some of those cues to the point where even when I'm getting ready to orient, my body already knows, oh, you're listening to me. All right, we're going to give you a yawn right about here because we know that this is regulating for us. And so I don't even need to do the whole thing. I just need to put myself in a position to let my body know that I'm listening. And my body's like, oh, okay, we got it. We can relax here. Right. And so sometimes it's about learning those things that really help our body. And it doesn't need to take 15 minutes. It doesn't need to take 20 minutes. It can be just that cue. And now I've done the orienting so many times and I've noticed when my body responds and how my body responds. So I can do that in no time at all. Now, there are still times where I need to do it more than once, or I need to do the full thing, or I'll continue to do the full, like left to right, top to bottom scan because I know that I got a little bit of regulation, but I can also nurture that regulation. I can deepen that regulation. I don't have to rush it. I don't need to just say like earlier, I laid on the ground and just kind of took some time. When I got up, I definitely slowed down. I started doing some things that needed to get done, but in a much less pressured way. But then before getting on this call, I did more regulating. Even though I wasn't still feeling all of the anxiety, all of like the chaos, I was like, I'm going to support myself even more. I'm going to get rid of any of that other stuff that's just kind of hanging there. But building it in or creating routines where that can sit is really helpful too. And so one of the things that I still have four kids, but when I had the fourth and was really overwhelmed and starting therapy and going through all of my own personal like chaos, one of the things that I learned to do was to create a tending basket because my daughter would go down for a nap, the other three would be at school, and she would nap for an hour and a half and she would wake up and I would realize I did nothing. I scrolled, I watched something, I read something, but like didn't actually enjoy the time that she was napping or didn't take advantage of the time that she was napping. And so it always felt too short. And so I created this tending basket. So the first thing I would do after putting her down for a nap would be to go to the spot that I normally went to, but had this basket available that had my headphones, it had a candle, it had my essential oils in there. It had crystals and a crystal book. It had whatever book I was reading. It had a blanket. It had, what else did I have in there? Um, but it was like when I went to that spot and I challenged myself that for the first 10 minutes of her nap, I would use something in that basket to nurture myself. And it really helped because I got in the first 10 minutes what I really needed. And then if I decided to scroll or read or watch a show for the next hour and zone out, I still got what I needed first. And so now it's about finding places in your routine where you already go, where you already have something that you can, you know, just take that deep breath. I don't know. I think Elisa, you might, but follow Brendan Burchard. Do you know that name? No. But so Brendan Burchard talks about every time he walks through a doorway, like in his house, in a building, whatever, every time he walks through a doorway, he says thank you and finds gratitude. And so it could be as simple as like, oh, I walked through a doorway, thank you. Or walk through a doorway, let me take a deep breath. But it's creating that pattern, creating that routine where it's not something else to do. It just is what you do. But we have to notice when we're feeling that dysregulation and want to come out of it. Because again, our brains are silly. They think that it's safer to be in the chaos that's familiar than the calm that's unfamiliar. Questions about that?
Can you actually put the name of that speaker or that person in the chat that we can look that up?
Absolutely.
Or you
Yeah,
can do it later. You can do it later.
It's Brendan Burchard. He is um, very a very popular motivational speaker. He does a lot of high performance speaking kind of things.
Thanks.
Mhm.
While you were going over this, I just realized we have these TheraBands at my kitchen table because my I have a child with ADHD. So I'm like listening to you talk. I'm like, use me. That was really calming. I could do this every day. I'm already sitting, like
Yeah.
not something added to my day. So that was really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's things like that, like putting TheraBand around your desk chair, if that's something that's supportive for you, putting your legs inside, what happens is it allows you to move, but it keeps you contained. So containers are really strong regulators for us, which is why we have great ideas in the shower, why we have great ideas in the car. Like my husband and my daughter tell me that I'm a crazy person. But when I get in the car in the summer, do not turn my air conditioning on and still start to drive. Like I can't handle the air, I can't handle the noise until I am actually out of my driveway and focused. Do not turn on my air conditioning. Now, in the winter, that heat better be blasting on me before I start to drive because I don't like to be cold, but I can be hot. I'll say all day, but I can be hot all day. It's not dysregulating for me in the same way that being cold is. And so, like, I like to drive in the car in the quiet because it's that space of allowing me to think. Being in the shower, we get great ideas, and it's like, oh, but it's because there's nothing else around us that's pulling our attention. Now, in the car, there are other things pulling our attention, but many of us are experienced drivers that, it's now routine and habit. If you're driving on 309 and you're paying attention to the lights, it might not be as easy. But depending on where you're driving and how much you actually need to pay attention, is it new roads that you've never been on? Well, you've got to pay a little bit more attention. But if you're driving to the same location that you drive to every day, your mind starts to wander. But again, you're not focused on the the pile next to you, the laundry that needs to be done, that like you're inside of something, and so all of that other noise can be quieted. All right, so we're gonna move to the A, alignment. All right, so alignment is working and leading in a way that matches your core values, your strengths, and your authentic self so that your actions feel natural and sustainable. So it's really about leading with your own personality, who you are, what makes you you from from deep down inside. Not all the things that you think you should be, not all of the roles and pieces that have been put on top of you. Like this was something that was really hard for me because as a mom, as a daughter, as a wife, I had so many expectations on myself that were very unaligned with who I actually was. And some of those were because it was how I internalized other people's expectations and all their things. And some of it was because that was what the expectation was. That's what they were expecting of me. And so I was looking to perform. But inside, it felt really uncomfortable. It felt wrong. It felt crazy. Like when my husband and I would talk about having a fourth baby, I wanted a fourth baby. Intuitively, I knew it. It was one of the most aligned things for me was I am meant to have this fourth baby. And he was like, I do not need another baby. We have three. We have all this other stuff. We are good. But I would say to him, I'm like, I feel like I have like a mental health issue. I did. It was called anxiety. But it was so unaligned with what was happening outside of me and what he was saying. And so it made me stop trusting what I really wanted was still okay for me to want. And I think that's another thing that as women, like we think because we don't see it or get it validated on the outside, we think that it's wrong that we feel it on the inside. And it's not. It just means it's not time yet, or we need to find a little bit more clarity first. Did you have something, Elisa?
I was just going to say that it really resonates with me because when I decided to start my own business and I had worked for somebody else for my entire career, and, you know, my friends, they all work for somebody else. I didn't really have a role model or somebody to sort of uh, just anybody to look to for this. But I knew deep down that I wanted to do this. And when I told my husband, it's just like, I need you to get on board with this because this is who I am and what I want to be and what my next chapter looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And until I could And I was all stressed out about it because I was at the time looking for other jobs and trying to figure out what was next for me because I had just been laid off. And, I had this moment of clarity. And so what you're saying just really resonates in terms of how I got to launching my business um, and just going for it because I just, once I made the decision, I felt so much better that I was on the path I was on.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times too, it's finding that clarity and knowing that it's aligned also makes it easier to get other people on board or get them to see your vision, not because we're forcing it on them or because we need them to have the same vision. But again, like with my dysregulation, with me feeling like my want for another baby was wrong, the conversations that my husband and I were having were not regulated. They were not supportive or moving us forward. They were arguing over the same points nonstop. And when we actually stepped back and started to have real conversations, that's when we decided together to have another baby.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't necessarily what he really wanted, but he was able to hear why it was important to me enough that we made the decision together.
Right.
And I think that piece is so important because when we come at it from like, oh, like I'm feeling this feeling, but I'm dysregulated and I don't know if it's right. And I'm going to tell you, it's almost like trauma dumping, right? Like, here's the thing that I need to do, and I need you to agree, and I need you to be on board, and I need you to help me. Nobody wants to help you in that state.
Mm-hmm.
At least that was my experience. Right away, my husband would like get defensive and be like, oh my gosh, like she can't handle her emotions. She can't handle what's going on inside. How in the world would we handle another baby? How in the world are we going to handle anything else when we can't handle what we've got going on?
It's funny. I would say too that once I got him on board and he was like, okay, let's do it. And then I was like, really? Like,
Oh, I can resonate with that.
like, right? Like,
I, I got my husband on board, and 2 weeks later, I had a positive pregnancy test, and I was like,
funny.
"Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
this
Like,
is
I
what I
guess we're
wanted,
doing
right?"
this.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
right,
That's really, it's funny. It's funny how that happens, but I haven't looked back. Right. And you haven't
yeah,
either. And,
no,
and
absolutely,
I think once you realize what that is, that needs to put yourself in alignment, it just makes a huge difference.
it does. And you know, when we're in that fight, because that's what it is, it's that fight, flight, or fright. When we're in that fight of like, let me prove myself, let me tell you why this is right for me, instead of just trusting it's right for me. Then when we get it or a part of it, it is like an oh shit moment. Or it is like, I can't even take this in or appreciate it or be grateful for it because is it going to go away? Is it real? Is it true? Am I going to be able to do it? And so we start to second guess ourselves. Whereas if we just stayed in alignment of this is what I'm meant to do, this is who I'm meant to work with, this is what I'm meant to like bring into the world. And I'm open to seeing how that plays out. I know this piece feels really right for me, so this is where I'm gonna lean or this is what I'm gonna do. We can't fail. Whereas when we're coming from it with approving energy, we're setting ourselves up to fail every time because we're never going to prove it. Right? Like there's always going to be another thing that we think we should do better or that we think we should do bigger or differently. But when we get into that alignment, when we reduce that pressure to do it all and find what we are supposed to do because it's right for us, it models that confidence, that calm. It puts us in that regulated space. And again, like you're all working with clients directly. And so it also models for our clients that alignment, that confidence, that calm, because we don't have a whole lot of models for that. Many of us grew up with parents who were dysregulated, with teachers who were dysregulated, with family members who were dysregulated in chaotic environments, whether it was just because it was just crazy in the house because everyone was going different directions, or because there was really true chaotic trauma. It wasn't conversations that were happening. It wasn't what we were learning how to regulate ourselves. And so by putting yourself into a position where you're an entrepreneur, you're putting yourself into a position to be a leader. And that creates an opportunity for you to be a role model in the community, in your environment, with your family, with your peers, with your clients. And, we need more of those right now in so many ways. All right. Any questions or other comments about alignment? All right. We are going to dive into values. And values is actually the first thing that I started with this framework. Because one of the things that I did was a lot of work around my own core values and what my personal values are. And when I started a business, when I started TeaCup and I looked at my values, they are so on brand for what I wanted in TeaCup. And so I'm just curious, do any of you have specific values? Like you've written them down or you know them specifically for your business? Yes. Yes. Do you have that for your personal self? Maybe kind of. Do they match up? Would anybody be willing to share a little bit about their values?
So I always, so as you know, I'm an editor and a writer, and when I'm editing other people's work, I look at it, I say, with a kind heart and a critical eye. So I don't sit there and say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this stinks, that kind of thing. This could be so much better. What's wrong with you? Like I come at it from kind, from a place of kindness. Kindness has always been how I lead, how I talk to people, how I work with people. I have it on my website that it's part of the values that I live by and work by. And I I hear it back from my clients, which is always nice to hear. Not all the time, but it is what I put front and center in everything that I do, because that's just how I operate. So that is the value that always sticks out first. And
And I love that, because with kindness is boundaries and clarity. And it doesn't mean that you're nice and you do whatever.
Right.
It means that you're kind and respectful and still can have that power, that leadership, that boundary of knowing what is right for you. Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
I'm not sure that it's a value, but one of my biggest things in my company is just positivity. as far as when I enter a room with a student and when I'm working with a child and a family is just a lot of kids come to me very low self-esteem because they have difficulty reading. So I try to find something that lights them up and ask them about them and allow them to teach me about it. And then I also make sure as we're working together, I'm highlighting what they're doing right. And then if there's something that needs to be edited or needs to be changed as far as a word that they misread, I try to like kind of gently say, okay, well, you knew that part. Let's look at this part. So always just leading with like that positivity, um, and always trying to come up with one positive and then like a little bit of a guidance. Not sure if it's values, but it's kind of like where I stand in my company.
No, absolutely. So our values are really the things that when we look at our whole life, our values don't change. So the word might change. Like at some point, I changed one of my words because I encompassed a little bit more of what I wanted. So at one point, it was strength, but then I changed it to growth because strength is a value of mine, but when I really look at what I was looking for that strength, it was more of growth. Like I want to know that I'm getting stronger. I want to know that I'm able to hold more, that my capacity is bigger. And so growth felt more like it held more for me. But these are the things, let's say 4 to 5 things, words that really at your foundation never change. They're always the same in every situation. They're always the same in different stages of your life. So, in the stage of my life where I was really struggling and doing this core value work, strength was the word that came up. Well, I was really feeling like I needed more strength, and I knew that was a piece, right? But when I really looked at it outside of that crisis moment, it was more about the growth that I wanted, more about like learning how to become a stronger, wiser, more capable, all those things person. Connection has always been one of my values. I love to connect with people. That doesn't change. That doesn't mean that I connect with every person in every room that I walk into. It actually means that I am very discerning with who I connect with. It means that I'm very sensitive to the energy when I walk into a room and I find the people that feel aligned and I go and connect with them because I want that deeper connection. I don't want that like superficial. I don't want that like, let me tell you all of the things, right? And so I'm looking for deeper connections because that's one of my core values. But if you were to watch me walk into a room of people that I don't get along with and for whatever reason am misaligned with, you might think she said her value was connection, but she's not connecting with these people, right? And so that's where that alignment piece comes in. Like, yeah, I want deep connections. I want real connections. I also know when that doesn't happen. So I'm not going out of alignment to create false experiences for myself, which is what I used to do is you want to talk to me, I'll talk to you too. And then I'm going to feel really uncomfortable or I'm going to feel like I got stuck in this conversation. And I wanted to talk to somebody, but now I don't really know. Like, that didn't really feel good. And so then I would leave something and feel drained. Whereas now I'm much more, and not, there are some events that I go to and I do feel drained because it is a lot to be on and have conversations. And sometimes you need to talk to the people that are in the room and that seek you out, all those things, right? But when it's more aligned, it's easier to stay in the flow and to do things that nurture those values. Does that give you a little bit more clarity on, like, I say what a value would be, or what, like, does positivity still feel like, and positivity might not be the word that you would choose if you were to like do like you can Google lists of core value words and you can find a million, like a list of 250 words, a list of 100 words. Um, I have one actually. Let me see if I can. I will drop a link for one in maybe. Hmm. I will share one. Oh, there it is. I'll drop it in the comments for you. Maybe if it lets me copy and paste it. So here's, and again, there are plenty on Google or Pinterest or whatever, but there's a list of words. And when I first started doing it, I just went through and I circled all the ones that felt like they resonated. And then I took those words and I went through and I just picked like the top 10. And then I took those words and said, like, could these two really be described in one? Right? So, like, could strength and growth be described just under growth? Or could community and connection just be described under one of those words? And which one felt right for me? Which one felt aligned for me? But again, like it gives us that foundation of when we look at what is really us at our core. And these are not aspirational. These are not the things that we hope to be. These are not the things that one day I'm going to become more of whatever it might be. These are things that already are us. And the more that we notice them and recognize them, and the more that we shine our light and highlight those, the more we become our true selves and the more we step into that. All right. I'm curious as to, and I know you both kind of talked about like how it shows up in your work. How do those values show up in your day-to-day life?
With my kids, I generally am very positive when they wake up in the morning. It's like, good morning, sunshine, and do a big hold or something that we can like kind of snuggle and connect in the morning since they both have to go to school. I'm not gonna say I'm like a perfect parent, but I try to like
That's
always
not the goal.
be very positive and uplifting when they get up in the morning, especially if they're not quite feeling it. Like one thing I do every morning when I have to wake up my son is I pick up our small dog and I place her on his bed. And it just feels like more of like a warm wake up, like a little lick rather than me like shaking him. So I guess that would be a good example.
It is. And I mean, right there, like, I'm hearing you say like positivity, like encouragement, connection, like you're looking for like just finding those bright spots. And that's so awesome. I'm curious too, if you think about like with your values, like, is there something in your life or with your values that your values need from you to be even more of or to do even more of? Like, are you showing up in that way for yourself? Are you being kind to yourself? Are you being positive towards yourself?
It depends on the day, especially with entrepreneurship and trying to take on more with my company is something I want to do this year is extend what I can offer. But even last night, I'm like, oh my gosh, would be nice to be a little kinder to myself. It's a very good point, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that kindness certainly shows up in my own personal life. Like if I'm I don't know. It's just something I do, like if people around me are frustrated, then I think I try even like a little harder to remember, like, to say, to give them, to smile or to empathize or something, to sort of say, hey, I get it. We all have days like that or whatever. But um, I would agree that the self, like being kind to myself, is not not easy because I do have a lot of responsibilities and my kids are out of the house. So, you know, it, it's still, I should be able to put myself a little bit more up front because I'm an empty nester. And so it's just, the two of us. And I'm trying to do more of that. And in particular, I think just, trying to find the people that have the same values as me, or and if they don't, then that's not who I really want as part of my circle. So, because that just sort of
Yeah,
invalidates what I'm trying to do or what I'm trying to
well,
say.
and that's where being discerning, having boundaries of I can be kind to you, but I can also recognize we have different values, and so I can interact with you in this space, but I'm gonna hold my boundary over here, and we don't need to have a conversation unless it's a respectful and regulated conversation.
Yeah, there are people in my life that I am, whether it's friends or family or what, or just in my circle that, you know, I am nice to, I'm kind to, and they're a little bit further. They're not part of the inner circle because if they were, I couldn't be who I want to be because I would just be constantly, I don't know, I would be, as we're going to talk about next, I'm sure my energy would just be um, like drained, having to live like having to fight all that off. So,
So I want to make the distinction of making sure that we're not adding a filter and people pleasing and shutting part of ourselves down versus I'm going to turn the volume down over here because I know that you're not listening. And so I'm going to save my volume so I can turn it up. But turning up our volume, again, I'm going to go back to like more women need to turn up their volume from a regulated, aligned, valued space, not from a I want to fight. I want to tell you all of my things, tell you all of the ways I've been wronged. Because conversations like this, like the more people we can talk to this way, the more people that hear conversations this way, the better. And so right now I'm practicing like, how do I make my voice louder? How do I get my message bigger? How do I like speak to more women in a way where they can also feel regulated when talking about their message so that we can all share our messages because we all belong. We are all meant to be here. None of us are better or need to be on a platform versus another. I know I talk about Melanie a lot, but she talks about like shoulder to shoulder. And she talks about if we are all shoulder to shoulder and we all have this incredible power and this internal alignment and drive to move forward, but we all have our own frequency to do that. We all have our own like recipe. And so by me making my light brighter gives you permission and also makes your light brighter. My light brighter does not dim yours. My voice stronger does not decrease yours. It should help you amplify yours. It can show you that yours is just as valuable. Like one of the things in 21 and 22 for me, there were people that was following on the internet that honestly, I still follow a few of them, but I'm like, I don't really get what you're saying. Like, I don't really think you're teaching anything that great. But the energy, and we'll lead into the energy here, the energy behind what they had to say was so big and so in their conviction and their passion that I was like, I don't resonate with what you're saying, but I resonate with how you feel. And I know I want to feel that way. And so and so I started following them because I'm like, how do you feel that way? And it's not a how, it's a why. Why do you feel that way? You feel that way because you have built the confidence, you have found that alignment, you have created boundaries that are strong, you have found regulation that I did not have any of those things as strongly as I do now. And so when I put all of those pieces together and start to really look at how do I get my voice out there? I was following them because I was like, they have all of those pieces. I don't need to resonate and agree with everything you say. You don't need to agree with everything I say. But if we can have a conversation and a disagreement and we can both listen, we still don't even have to agree, but we can like come to an understanding of, okay, now I understand why you believe that. Now you understand why I believe this. Now we can still move on with our day. But it's about again, like that confidence versus proving. Feeling confident, but also humble. I'm sure you've been in rooms where the person that's leading, the person that's speaking, and I know I've done it myself, but like they're trying to prove something. And you're like, just stop talking because the more you talk, the less smart you sound about this topic. Right? Can you resonate? Like, can you think of someone who just doesn't stop talking because they know everything about everything? And you're like, you actually sound really dumb because you're trying to prove yourself here because maybe you know a little bit, but you like now you're just making things up. And so it's about getting into getting into the energy, the frequency that we want to be in, but recognizing this was a game changer for me too. Recognizing that the frequency that we're in is different than the emotions that we're feeling. So I can be in a frequency of gratitude, in a frequency of I am really enjoying my life right now. I'm loving the things that are coming. I'm loving the women that are in my community. I love getting to speak to people, getting to teach. I can't wait for my event. I'm loving planning the event. And at the same time, I can have anxiety. I can be sad. I can be angry. I can be frustrated, but still be on the frequency of gratitude while feeling those emotions. For so long for me, I didn't understand that those weren't the same thing. Because if you follow Abraham Hicks or if you follow anybody on manifestation, like the way to manifest is to find joy and gratitude. And I was like, well, I'm really pissed right now, so I guess I'm never gonna manifest anything, right? But we can have experiences at different levels of emotion and different levels of frequency. So I can be on a frequency of despair and anxiety, whereas like everything that happens, so 5, 6, all right, now it's like 6, 7, like 7 years ago, um, like I'm pregnant with my daughter. I am at my lowest. And even when I had a good moment, I was still coming back to my foundation was zero self-worth, despair, anxiety. I wasn't getting anything done. And then my husband would do something nice and it would be nice for the moment, but then I would fall right back to like depression. Whereas now I'm up higher on a sense of like that frequency of gratitude. And so when something like my car doesn't start, I'm like, man, that's really annoying. But also, I can come back up to gratitude because at least I'm not freezing and I have food in the car and I know somebody's coming to tow me or jump start me or whatever I need. And I'm going to miss my kids' basketball game, but quite honestly, I've seen enough basketball games that missing one is not a big deal, right? And so it's about, I used to say, like, I felt like I needed to deepen my foundation. Like, I felt like I was building all of these layers and learning all this personal development, but my foundation wasn't there to hold it all. And the foundation work was really that energetic work, that frequency work of how do I go from depression and despair and anxiety. Abraham Hicks has a scale. I don't know what it is. You could Google it if you want it. But how do I go to the next one? But every time I got stuck in like, I'm sad or I'm mad, I'm like, right back down because I didn't recognize that I could have all of those emotions while being in a grateful frequency. So I'm curious if there are questions or reflections on that. All right. That is really what I have for our brave entrepreneurship. So we're holding our boundaries strong. It all I want to start with the A. Like it's all about being in alignment. It's all about trusting ourselves, trusting that what feels good for us really is the next right step. We can have filters on that keep us protected, which is where that regulation comes in because what feels right for me this morning was, oh, I think I should go clean up my entire house. Well, no, I need to be regulated so I can get rid of that dysregulated filter. And now I'm going to find more clarity on what's really aligned. What's really aligned is for me to focus on what do I need to do for my presentation this afternoon? What email needs to go out or what information needs to go out? And so sometimes that regulation gets, that dysregulation piece creates that murkiness over our values and our alignment. And then holding the boundary up. You know what? I said, this is who I am. I said, this is what I'm going to do. I said, this is the boundary that I'm holding. And so now I'm going to practice holding it. And for me and for many of my clients, I know sometimes the boundaries that are the hardest to hold are the ones that we create for ourselves and holding ourselves accountable to those boundaries. And then getting into the energetic of that gratitude piece, finding the pieces that are working, finding that alignment of how can I make this more mine, more in alignment with me and turn up the volume enough because the other thing too is when we are so in tune and so aligned with a message, even when that volume is turned all the way up and somebody disagrees, it doesn't matter. It's just noise because it doesn't even resonate with us anymore. It's like, oh, you have a different opinion. That's great. But this one's mine because we don't feel the need to like argue it or like get into an argument about it. It can just be like, okay, you're not going to listen to what I have to say and you feel a need to over explain yourself. But if I'm in alignment with what my message is and what is right for me, I'm not really worried about whether or not you agree with me. I'm in a space of knowing what's right for me. And so I'm going to turn the volume all the way up because I want those other people that want to hear my message and are resonating with my message. And honestly, the people who don't, I want them to hear it too so that they know they don't need to come over here. Like they're welcome to stay over in their spot, right? Like they're welcome to keep moving forward too. They don't need to crash into my lane. We all have our own lanes. We all have our own paths that we're forging. And when someone starts to argue with me that my path is wrong, well, that's just diverting them from their own path. And so it's my mission to stay on my path instead of focusing on who gets in mine or what they're doing in theirs. Right? Unless they're walking alongside of me and we're moving together. So, ladies, I hope you found this very helpful. I appreciate you hanging out with me today.
Thank
And
you
I
very
look
much.
forward
This
to
is great.
seeing you on Friday. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. But enjoy the rest of your day today.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
And so thank you for joining us for our Brave Entrepreneur Expert Series. And you can catch the next one. And every month we have different experts. Sometimes it's myself, sometimes it's other experts in various areas where women are being supported for the woman she is behind her business as well as in her business. So thanks for joining us today.